Right, 15 minutes. 15 minutes. So my name is Jackie Walker, and I've been a lifelong anti-racist activist, teacher, trainer and writer. As a young woman, I was active in the anti-apartheid movement. I was actually working with SWAPO, who was dealing with the apartheid system in Namibia. And so for me, it was a sort of natural progression to become interested in supporting the Palestinians and to be a critic of what was happening in Israel. And I think that's important for me to say, because I have absolutely no doubt, I'm sure many of you will have seen the videos done by Al Jazeera, the lobby, that one of the reasons, or the reason, let's be frank, the reason why my posts were delved into, and why papers like the Jewish Chronicle and why organisations like the Jewish Labour Movement have had such an attraction towards me is because of that target towards anybody who is in any way prominent, and as Tony reminds me all the time, I'm not. He says I'm a minor figure. No, Tony is absolutely right. And what I want you to think of is, if you think of the fact that I'm a minor figure and then consider the level of attention I have had, I think that tells you a lot about A, the level of paranoia, and B, the level of resources that is going into this campaign. So, I'm missing off all sorts of stuff because I'm conscious of the time, but you can come back to me in questions. I think it's not a coincidence, is it, that apparently we had no problem in the Labour Party with anti-Semitism until Jeremy Corbyn, one of the best-known anti-racists that there have been on the left, became leader of the Labour Party. I mean, can you imagine what happened in Tel Aviv when they heard that Jeremy was leader? I mean, it was all stations go, wasn't it? But what's really happened with this, and I get sort of in trouble for saying this, so I will say it once more, is that accusations of anti-Semitism have really become weaponised. They have become actually a weapon of mass destruction. And that weapon of mass destruction, as you know in Brighton, does not just affect individuals like me. It's affected communities, it's affected families, it's affected Labour parties, it's affected people who actually want to support the battle to have better human rights. And if you think, and I've had this discussion, because, you know, there are those on the left. Let me make it plain, my problem is not with those on the right or with Zionists. They are doing their jobs. They are our enemies. They are doing their job. My problem is with people who are supposedly on the left, who are actually undermining us all the time. That is our problem here. Now, of course, I'm going to say something about Israel here. You know, the reason why Israel has put millions of pounds against undermining the BDS is not for no reason. I think it is a recognition of the fact that awareness of what's happened in Gaza, or should I say what's happening in Gaza, is being steadily raised. And at the same time as that's being steadily raised, we see this strange thing happening with leaders, internationally, leaders, who in a way seem to be getting closer and closer to Israel. And we see that in particular happening, I think, at the moment with what's happening in America. And for a lot of people, they find that link between the alt-right and support for Zionism very strange. But actually, to me, as an anti-racist campaigner, it makes total sense to me. Because all nationalist ideologies have more in common than they have things that separate them. Of course, you know, Trump can speak a language that the chair of the Board of Deputies understands, particularly when he's saying things in support of settlements. And even now, and actually I think it might be a good thing that we have some plain speaking on this, even now suggesting, or shall we say beginning to lay the ground for what looks like might be the introduction of the idea that the two-state system solution is actually dead. Now I actually think in a way, I think that would clear ground, because for many of us, I think it has been very clear with the building of the settlements that actually the two-state solution is totally unworkable. And I say that as somebody who actually has relatives living in the settlements in Israel. And let me tell you, there is no way those people are leaving.
They will.
So, I'll take that up later. Now, Netanyahu, of course, and I know we're speaking about how the discussion on Palestine is being shut down. We know that Netanyahu has actually branded BDS and people like us as a strategic threat. We're literally classed as a strategic threat. So we're up there with Iran's nuclear weapons, Hamas, and no doubt a few of other Israel's enemies. I find that quite extraordinary that at the age of 63 and you know, grandmother of 3, that I'm up there with Hamas. It's even more crazy because I don't know if anybody saw this, but the Wiesenthal Centre had, you know, they do the 10 top global threats, anti-Semitic threats, the 10 top in the world. And number 2, only number 2, so they were giving a bit of leniency there, came Jeremy Corbyn and Jackie Walker. Yes, I am the number 2 threat to Jews. Not Hamas, interestingly, no, it's Jackie Walker, and I'm sure Tony would like to be up there with me. So this fight is being led by Israel's Minister of Strategic Affairs, and they're really gearing up on this. They've put a lot of money into this, they've put a lot of effort into this, and let me tell you, it's no easy thing to resist what's happening to me. I mean, I'm making light of it, but it's destroyed my life. I don't have a life anymore. And I don't have a life anymore because I have chosen to become that crazy woman who, you know, sits out there going, no, I won't be silent. And I won't be silent. I won't be silent about the injustice I see. I won't be bullied by these people. I won't allow people who tell me that they want to see me put in a plastic bin and burnt, or sent to a concentration camp, or call me any of the names they want to. I will not be silenced. And apart from the fact, one of the reasons I won't be silenced is because, you know, I've had racial abuse as a black person, because I'm Jewish and black, as some of you may have noticed, for 63 years. And I kind of got to that point that you do when you're older, when you go, do you know what, I can't be arsed anymore with this. But there's another thing that's very significant about me as opposed to other people, which is I don't have a job. And I no longer have young children to look after. I've told my children who are grown up to come off Twitter so that they don't see what is being said about their mother. But also, for example, when I was sharing a platform at Norwich PSC, there was a very nice teacher, young teacher, who actually had the temerity to read out a poem that his children had written about children in Palestine. And what happened to him after this huge wave of criticism was sent to the education officer is he almost lost his job. Because this is what these people are like. Every single time I go to a meeting, there are attempts to shut it down. Even to the point where recently, we had a security officer turn up in the middle of one of those meetings because somebody had phoned them to tell them that there was a rabid racist speaking and it was going to kick off trouble. Now that's one of the nicer techniques that they have. So this, you know, apart from what's happening with the taking up of what's called this new definition on anti-Semitism, which is making it problematic for people to speak out, this is what's happening to freedom of speech. And for those of you who are in the Labour Party, I'm on my second suspension already, by the way. For those of you in the Labour Party who believe the narrative that really this is a fringe problem and it doesn't really affect our politics very much, just think again, because they are undermining and picking us off, and it's the left that are being attacked, and it's the left that are being gagged. Now, I'm sure had I gone quietly, you know, apart from the fact that I wouldn't be here today, they'd be leaving me alone. But like I said, I'm not going to go quietly, and there are things that are going to be happening in the future that I really think it's important for you to look out for. Those of you who saw the lobby programme would have noticed the involvement of the Jewish labour movement in this. The Jewish labour movement, for historical reasons, have an affiliation with the Labour Party, and they're actively lobbying for rule changes that will come in to conference this year, conference which is going to be held in Brighton, which will mean that any kind of criticism of Israel will become such a hot potato, it will be very hard for people to discuss it within CLPs, and that's actually what they want. Now, by the way, I think another really important point to mention in terms of misinformation that happens is that actually my second suspension was not for anti-Semitism. I know the newspapers said that, but you know, you've really got to stop believing what the newspapers say. They lie. When they lie in a very interesting way. Because what happens is, you know, I don't think it's a conspiracy, but I do think what happens is, for example, the Jewish Chronicle gets a story, they run it, and the other newspapers then run the same story. They don't come back to you to question it. They actually run exactly the same story. Now some people say, well, why don't you sue them? Well, why don't I sue them is because I'm not a millionaire. You know, if somebody would like to give me, according to my lawyers, it would cost about £500,000 to run something because of the kind of case it would be. I'd be quite happy to run a case of defamation both against the Jewish Chronicle and the Board of Deputies. So the JLM are very much building up their position in the Labour Party. Now the interesting thing about the JLM is that you actually don't have to be Jewish to be a member. In fact, I read somewhere, maybe that's what should happen. Maybe all you lot should join the JLM. That would get them going, wouldn't it? But you don't have to be Jewish to join the JLM. And so there's a question about the validity about the JLM being the voice of Jews. But I would suggest to you that what the JLM is a very effective voice of the right. And as such, they have now a position on the NEC, and I believe they've also got a position on the Equalities Subcommittee. Now what that means is if and when people like me and like Tony are being suspended for being racist, because that's what anti-Semitism is. It's not a special, there's nothing special about anti-Semitism. It's being a racist. That's what it is. Because every kind of racism has its own particularities and its own histories. But if we come up, there they will be with their own ideas about what actually an anti-Semite is. Now, one thing I would like to ask the Labour Party on this, in terms of, and I have asked the Labour Party this, by the way, and I think it would be really interesting to get an answer from them, is in my second suspension, I was suspended for comments that I made, or supposed comments I made during a training session. Now, I've asked the Labour Party, have they investigated who leaked that to the press? Remember, that was in Labour Party conference. You couldn't get in unless you were a Labour Party member. And I have suggested that perhaps the person who brought the Labour Party into disrepute was actually the person who leaked that tape. Seems to me pretty straightforward. I would think about that, certainly. And also, there are people who think they know who that person was. Interestingly enough, I haven't had a response on that at all. So, I've been given my 2-minute nudge. Keep your ears out. It's an ongoing situation. We are here in a struggle. We are up against extraordinary forces. I mean, you know, these are extraordinary forces that we're up against. And insignificant as I am, as long as I can keep annoying them, I will keep buzzing. Thank you.